Today I want to welcome all students of the UCLA NUS Management Practicum. It's my pleasure to speak with Professor Jochen Wirtz, who's actually worked in this program for many, many years. So if you could just start by telling us a little bit about what makes a successful practicum.
It's a lot of process factors, actually. I think the number one thing to me is project planning and execution. And here my main recommendation is front load your work, front load your interviewing and your collection of data. You can sit forever in a room and discuss the structure of the market, what clients might think. And nothing beats to go out, talk to competitors, to experts, to customers, and even to the client organization. And front loading, I always recommend everyone, once you go to India and present as if it is the final presentation. Put your cards on the table. This is what we think, and test run it in the class and see, what people say to that, how they buy into your logic. And to me, often it means you don't have all the data by then, but you have a pretty good hunch. So why don't you take, assuming this is true, what would this mean for our analysis and for our recommendations? And just present that and see how it goes. And my experience is the most successful projects, they are pretty much final by Bangalore, or they think they're final, okay? Then they present, and then they get feedback from the professors and from the class and from everyone. And often their thinking shifts dramatically. And I think this is really where you get depth and rigor into the project. And if you only present some initial thoughts, initial findings, nobody can bite their teeth in your recommendations and your analysis. So they can't really say very much to it. But if you say, we think the market is structured as follows. This is what competition is doing. This is the trends, technology trends here. And therefore, we will recommend our client to do the following. Then you get very qualified, very good feedback that will shift your thinking, I promise you. Yeah? So I think project management and front loading to me are very important. Second is teamwork. Yeah? To make sure role clarity is there, deliverables are clear, people are committed to delivering on deadlines. Everyone has their own rhythm and peak times and less busy times during the project, so make sure you plan that into your project plan. So, for example, I'm very busy in November, December, but I can take a lot more load in January, February, so discuss this up front and work accordingly. So I think teamwork is important. And very often successful teams, they also structure according to geography. So that means the team in charge of client contact is close to the client. The team in charge of looking at markets is in the market. So ideally, that gives you the closeness also to where you're collecting data, where you're collecting intelligence, where you conduct interviews. It also means if you fly in, you don't have to fly in such a long distance. So it's easier to do. I think that's my second key point. The third point is client communications. So understand expectations of clients, understand the hot points, the priorities of clients. Yeah. I've seen projects where the team was very clear in saying the net present value of this project is not going to be fantastic, may even be negative. But the client said, but we want to do it. So how then do you have the rigor from an academic point of view and a consultant point of view that you say, look, the project is not going to make a lot of money? But on the other hand, the client says we still want to do it. Then I think in this case, what we've done many times, he said, okay, we believe these are the financials of the project, but given the strategic importance of this project to our client, given that they feel they have to move into this market, how would you do it? So you still go ahead with, you make that point very clear that you don't think the financials meet their threshold, but you still give them the answer of, look, we know you want to do it, and this is how we would recommend you to enter that market. A fourth point is rigor and clarity. I can see this in the clients, the class, the professors. They love it when you have a final presentation that is very clear and very rigorous, and no one can jump in and say, yes, but, and why not? Yeah? So it's always a very fine line not to give too much data, not to give too little data, but to really nail down the key points, quantify them, present them, and convince the audience that the data are correct, the analysis follows from there, and these are the findings from there, And therefore, this is our recommendation. So there's a very, very tight logic, there's a very, very tight analysis, and there is the rigor in terms of the numbers and the analysis, and then there's also the rigor in terms of very often in theory or concepts that are brought into that analysis. And these are for me as an academic, of course, these are the most beautiful projects, but I can see clients also truly appreciate it. So less opinion, more rigor.
So could you tell us a little bit about what clients specifically find valuable? So from the client standpoint, what is it that they think that's really, really valuable for them?
I think the most valuable part is they get quite an impartial and neutral take on the questions they have. So the teams are able to collect data and insights from even internally, which often the client can't get, from customers, which often the client can't get, definitely from competition, which is very hard to come by, and also from industry experts. So this being a third party, being neutral, and coming with a fresh and untroubled vision to this project, and asking often quite different questions from quite a different perspective or angle than the company would approach that question, adds a lot of value. So this impartial look at things, I think that's one. And the other is you have professors involved here, so they add a lot of rigor to it. And again, coming back to it's not an opinion anymore, this is really quite a tight deduction. Yeah? And I think these two things combined can add a lot of value to the client organization.
So a lot of our clients are from Asia, and increasingly so this time, a majority of our clients are from Asia. Is there anything specific about working with clients in Asia that you want to highlight to our students?
Communication is a little bit more difficult, and opening internal books and so on is a bit more difficult than it would be in a European or an American company. So that requires a bit more trust building, a lot more communications, and maybe here and there also the help from the supervisors to get access, that we don't reinvent the wheel, and that data they have already, that we don't have to collect them, but rather we review what they have done and then decide whether or not we want to supplement that data with additional data. So I think that's to me the main difference, really. A lot of these projects from Asian clients tend to be externally focused. We have done fewer projects internally for that reason, I guess. So they're very happy to say, oh, please do a competitor analysis. But it's sometimes difficult then to do the internal analysis.
Could you also talk a little bit based on your experience? Some projects wouldn't have gone so well. Some of the clients might not have been very happy with the output. What are some of the things to learn from those failures? What is it that students should avoid?
The worst thing I've ever seen was a client standing up in the final presentation stating, I disagree, wholeheartedly. So this was clearly a lack of onboarding of the client and client communication. So every decision, every major decision recommendation you make should be discussed with the client. Client concerns should be onboarded and integrated and mitigated. Yes, and even to the extent if the team and the client differ in opinion on things, or the analysis, we believe the analysis goes this way, but the client feels this way, you may have to run this project on two tracks to one say, look, this is the rigorous academic view of the market, but we had a disagreement here on this fork, and therefore we also analyzed an alternative scenario based on client assumptions. And what is the difference? So I think you cannot bulldoze clients' needs and strategic directions here. You have to take them into the project, even if that may make the project slightly messy. So I've seen alternative spreadsheets attached as alternative scenarios to reports and so on. Or it was agreed with the client, look, this is the final presentation we make, and this is based on our analysis. But in the report, you will have the alternative analysis.
Could you talk a little bit about research? And so specifically, I'd like you to talk about the importance of primary research vis-a-vis getting some secondary information that's already out there in the market. And how important is primary research to the final recommendation?
Both are equally important, right? So why recollect data that are already there? And the teams have fantastic databases in both universities. So the first thing I tell every team, look, the first 10 days, just all hit the library, go through all the databases, download whatever you can get. Go to industry associations, go to the websites of the consulting companies. If you're in logistics, Accenture as a whole, McKinsey as a whole, whatever portfolio of projects and cases already, maybe even in your country, in your industry, right? So get all of those things first and sift through this quite quickly to build a picture. What's the big picture? Right? You want to have the macro picture, that's the overall global market. This is the Asian continent, and this is Malaysia. So you triangulate the data up and down, right? So if you have the big picture, you can really you know this market is not more than $20 billion. Simply because the whole of Asia is so much, and Malaysia doesn't have more share than this, right? So you can argue over, is it 21 million or 18 million, but the magnitude, you get these things pretty right. Even, let's say, what are the sectors within, how much is cold chain versus whatever, and so on. You get down, just through secondary research, you can nail all of that. So the primary research for me then is really much more going out, given that cold chain is probably the biggest. So, and given we know globally and so on, these are the needs and concerns, and these are the industry trends here, do they also hold in Malaysia? Are there any specifics there? Who are the biggest customers? Who are the biggest competitors there? What is the, so often the industry reports don't give you these really specifics, and this is where I think the interviews come in. That's why I said, front load the project. Do not wait too long making those. You can forever dwell in secondary data and analyze them and think about them. But it's very, you often your eyes open when you have 3 interviews with 3 different players, you get 3 different opinions, but you integrate all of this then, together with the knowledge you have from the secondary data. So I'm a big fan of qualitative interviews, especially if that includes people who are in the markets, or marketing salespeople, competition, industry experts, industry associations, and then enlightened clients who are sort of at the cutting edge of what you're working at. And they give you real insights that have true value, because your client will only have a sort of a slice of that knowledge. You paint a complete picture.
So finally, I want to ask you about teamwork. So, everyone knows teamwork is important. But this is a unique setup where people are all over the world, they have different kinds of expertise, they work on different timelines. So what is it about teamwork that they should especially keep in mind, given that this is a 6 months long engagement, the client also might not be in the same city as them?
Well, work on people's strengths. Yes, people who know how to do the financial analysis, they should do the first cut of the analysis. Or if someone is in the team, there's the learning aspect of it. If someone wants to learn how to do it, pair that person with the expert, and let the person who wants to learn it do the first cut, but then make sure everything is right and so on. So that gives you, depending on the objectives of the team members, right? I think that's very important. Look at the strengths, look at the time availability. And this may sound bad, but I've seen teams of 6, 7 people, or 3, 4 people carry the project. So if you find that people don't pull, you can try to engage them, you can try to work with the professors and so on, but in the end, if they don't deliver and hinder the project, you have to work around that. So that's just, I can say this now, I'm not teaching this module anymore, okay? But I've seen there will always be people who will not carry their full weight. So as a team, you have to just discuss that open and frankly, and then work around it.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your insights. I'm sure our students will find it very valuable. Thanks so much, Jochen.
Thank you, Vishal.